July 28th, 10 p.m. Got a lot to talk about today. I got sent for a loop tonight. Hit with existential questions, moral questions. But first, what did I work on today? Well, I had another excellent day, sticking to my routine, absolutely killing it. From this point on, now that I seem to be consistent with this, I'm not going to mention this anymore. So unless I say otherwise, we shall assume that I have been doing well. Now, as for the game, I mentioned yesterday that I was thinking about what to do with the short videos that I want to make in order to market myself in my game on TikTok, on YouTube Shorts, and so on. And I was having trouble figuring out what I want to do. So I decided to take a little break from that today, at least for a little while, and focus more on the game. Maybe by taking my mind away from it, something might occur to me later. So as I went to work on the game, I recalled that someone had left a post on my Steam page forum recently mentioning that for their much crappier computer, it might be helpful to turn off post-processing effects. Specifically in my game, it's got, well, you can see it right here, all these little dots. There's a grain effect that's constantly running, there's a vignette effect, and there's also a bloom. So a few different ones. There's actually some color adjustments as well. So a bunch of post-processing stuff going on. And I suppose this is a good example of one of those things where, since my computer is really good, I never was able to see from profiling things that post-processing was much of a problem, because any modern graphics card will do this stuff no problem. But on an older graphics card, they might struggle with having constant full screen space shader effects and post-processing effects happening. So in the game before, I had a high, medium, low, and very low setting, which disabled stuff like shadows and reduced the number of particles and turned the entire lighting system off. That's what the very low setting does. And that gave a big performance boost to my old laptop here, which is like 5 years old, I think. More than that, it's maybe even 6 or 7 years old. So I figured it was a good test case for older computers. But the people complaining about this stuff, I think, have even older computers than that. Some ancient desktops. So yeah, so that seemed like a good fix before. But since this guy mentioned the post-processing, it was a good call. Probably a problem for really old computers. So I went ahead and added an ultra low setting now, which also turns off the post-processing effects. One problem here is that the vignette effect that happens is when you run out of energy in the game and it zooms in on your dude, like not zooms in, but there's like an orange color vignette that comes in that makes it really obvious when you're out of energy. So I will have to put in, I guess, a manual sprite in order to replace that if you're playing on the ultra low mode, because right now it's really hard to tell if you run out of energy and you're playing on such low graphics settings. So that was one thing. And then from there I noticed that that there was potential still for fixing some other things. So another bottleneck, I think there's something going on the CPU side as a bottleneck as well, where maybe I can fix some stuff. One issue is I kind of stupidly, being the noob that I was with Unity, there's so many features in it, sometimes you don't know how everything works, and if something seems fine, you just go with it. So my heads are detached from my characters' bodies. This is so that their heads can rotate separately. So when I was originally creating all the characters, I didn't know that with Unity's animator component, you can animate multiple things at the same time in a single animator. It's like you can affect the sprite of the main body, but then you can also change the sprite of an attached object, such as the head, and yeah, whatever. You can animate a whole ton of things. So I created completely separate animators and animation trees, both for the heads and the bodies of every single character. So there's technically twice as many animators running in the game than there needs to be. So that adds a little processing. So I can get rid of that, and hopefully that'll maybe be a small boost. I don't know if it's that big of a deal, but Another thing with animators, as well, as I discovered there is an option on them for culling. So when they're not visible on screen, you can have the animator just be completely disabled, which is fine for most of my characters, except for my archers, because their animation actually determines when they'll fire the arrow. So the animation does technically need to be running, just the logic part. But there's also an option for run the logic, but don't actually update anything visually. So still save some power. So I went with that and set that on all the animators for all of my characters. So tomorrow I'm going to consolidate I'm going to consolidate all the animators for their heads and bodies for most of the characters. I did it for the archers already, but I'm going to go back and fix it for them all. It'll be convenient for the future in case I need to mess with their animations anyway, and might as well fix it up. It was always on my mind, but I was like, it's kind of lazy, you know? Because there's a lot of animations in there. I got to go through every single one and copy paste the head over to the body animator. Anyway, yeah, and then I got to add a fake vignette for the ultra low mode. And the one other thing I noticed as well was that whenever I pause the game, well, there are a couple of things. One, if I disable all the enemies in the level, there's a pretty good 60 FPS boost. And the same happens whenever I pause the game. And if I disable the characters and then pause the game, I get like 120 FPS boost. It stacks. So there's clearly some kind of processing stuff going on that seems possibly inefficient that I could improve. I tried disabling different elements of the enemies individually, and I noticed there's a bunch of stuff I can disable where on its own it gives me maybe another 10 FPS, but nothing that captures the full 60. So I don't know if that's because it's just all these different components combined together. I would suspect that it is for the most part with the characters. So there's probably not too much I can do there to improve it. One idea that did occur to me, thanks to some ChatGPT back and forth help, is that I could disable the enemies, or at least disable a lot of their components while they're off screen, especially in my game where it doesn't matter at all. They're just in the rooms. As long as they're doing their patrol pass, that's the only thing they really need to be doing, and then re-enable it once you get close enough to them and they become visible on screen again. Maybe that'll help. I don't know. I feel like if I combine all this, it'll probably be enough to help out those computers for people who have really crappy computers, where I guess the game is practically unplayable from the sounds of it. And then I'm going to do some profiling with when I pause the game to see what exactly is pausing the game doing that's increasing the performance so much. I mean, obviously it's to some extent kind of obvious that this time scale goes to 0, right? So it stops updating a whole bunch of stuff. But I'm really curious to know what the difference is that's so significant, and especially what is going on when I disable all the enemies. And even with all of them disabled, I pause it and it still gives me a big performance boost. So I feel like there's something going on there with the pausing that I'm kind of confused about what it would be updating that's taking up so much performance. So hopefully I can find something in there as well. And hopefully with all this together, it'll all be running a lot better. Guess we'll find out. So it's nice to make some breakthroughs when it comes to performance optimization stuff. Well, hopefully breakthroughs, at least a little bit. And I was going to say, related to kind of performance stuff, my graphics card on my computer. So I bought the computer I'm using right now. I can give you a look at it. Check it out, pretty sweet. Pretty nice computer. It's got a RTX 4070 Super. Now, ever since I first got it, I have had problems with this graphics card. It crashes randomly all the time. Actually, when I'm editing my own game, in the Unity editor, when I go to certain levels, especially ones that have a lot of lighting, that my second, my third, my fourth level. First level never crashes, but my pretty much every other level, except for the narrative ones, they also seem to work okay. It will randomly crash sometimes, especially if I zoom out to look at the whole level. It seems to be somehow related to lighting effects. I also, when I was playing Rocket League, there's one map in that game, or two maps, where the card always crashes, but everywhere else it's fine. When I played Dota a long while back, it would work 90% of the time, but then randomly all of a sudden start crashing. When I run I don't know, when I run certain like random Unity games, especially indie games, I notice maybe because they'll tend to be less optimized off of Steam. I tried out a few random indie game demos. The game will crash right away. And so finally, I tried out recently. I was like, I should get to the bottom of this. Oh, yeah, and with my video editing, that's also really annoying. I get little artifacts when I export my videos, and if I try to put certain effects in my videos, it also will completely crash it. And everywhere where I can see the error logs, it's always showing some kind of problem with the drivers or some kind of graphic card memory failure or something like that. So I was pretty convinced that this card is busted, and then I confirmed it with this program, OCCT, I think it's called. Yeah, OCCT. It's like a, if you ever need to test stuff on your computer, it's good for whatever, everything, CPU, memory. So I put it through the GPU tests, and it just, within seconds of starting it, it immediately hits like 10,000 errors. So this whole time, for the past year since I've had this, I kind of just worked around it because most of the time it's fine. Everything else about the computer works great. And when it came to stuff like the video editing, I found ways of working around it by exporting it in different formats. It's annoying because I have to export it and then convert it later using a different program. So kind of sucks, but it was working fine. And I don't know, just recently when I was making those shorts I showed yesterday actually in CapCut, I got more crashes because of it. I was like, all right, you know what? I should just look into this and deal with this. I was thinking I'll just leave it alone and work around it while I'm still working on the project. Because the reason why I was so hesitant I have a warranty for this, but I was hesitant to replace it is because I'll probably have to go without a graphics card for a couple of weeks because they have to put in like a request with the company to replace the graphics card for being defective, and then I got to ship it to them, and it's not until they get it that they'll then verify it and then send me the new one, right? So I won't be able to work on my computer for a couple of weeks, and so I figured I'll just make the whole game, finish the game, and then once that releases, maybe then I'll hit these guys up and finally fix the card. But yeah, I figured it's been causing me enough problems now over a long enough period of time that, you know what, it's probably better that I just deal with this. And I do have my laptop, and I did have the period of time when I was waiting on this computer to arrive, actually, where I worked on my laptop for a while, and so I can make it work, whatever. I asked to see if they can maybe give me an advanced replacement instead too before I send it, but that'd be nice, but whatever. Okay. So that's it with the game. Then I went on my daily walk, chilled out at the park, and thought more about what to do with these videos. Now, somebody mentioned yesterday, my friend
July 20th.
MSG Manu Singil MSG Ill.
July.
Oh, is that what the name is? MSG Ill? All right. MS Gill. Anyway, he commented on my video yesterday mentioning that he felt I should post my shorts anyway that I was showing from that video, which I appreciate the comment. So I don't have an issue with, the thing about that though is I don't have an issue with posting whatever and experimenting. That's kind of my phase I'm going through right now. I mean, with these videos especially, every single time I post one of these daily diary videos, dude, I lose subscribers. So I very much am not caring at all about the numbers right now. I'm just doing whatever and trying to figure out my path creatively with especially making video content. The problem with those videos is more so just that well, number one, I have a technical problem, which is that CapCut Pro is what I use to make those, and I don't have a subscription for that. So just to be able to export and post those, I'd have to pay $30. So it's a question of, do I think that's going to do well enough that it's worth paying for that? And I don't think it's going to. So that was one reason. The other one was just that I'm not worried about posting anything random, even if it doesn't do well. I'm just like, what I'm trying to do right now, though, is find something concrete that I'm really happy with that I can stick with. just because it's a matter of direction and strategy. Just because for the whole time I've been making these videos, I've been all over the place, and I feel like that lack of direction is holding me back somewhat. Like, I don't know, it's gotten better. To be fair, objectively, over the past few months, I've had my best performing videos by far, and that was by still doing random stuff. But I really want to nail down something that can do better consistently and not just randomly. And so that's why I was fixated on finding some quality template I can use that will work for this and to get my style across as well. Now, sitting in the park today, I did come up with another idea. And I wrote down new scripts for this. No more poems, but instead just simple, straightforward scripts where I can sit here, I can talk to the camera, and then transition into footage from my game. And it all makes sense, and it works in the style that I was thinking, insofar as it is more thoughtful and philosophical and whatever. That whole new idea I was mentioning about the way I wanted to brand myself. So I was pretty happy with that. The one thing about it is the way I've written these is kind of explanatory. It's sort of like, I think it's interesting, I think it's thoughtful, but it's kind of like telling you what I'm trying to do with these games. And it raised in me the question again of, isn't it kind of silly to explain what my game is about as opposed to allowing the work to speak for itself? But I don't know. I really like what I wrote. So I suspect what I'll do tomorrow is I'll probably meditate on what I've written there again, reflect on it, and see if I can maybe craft it a little differently in a way to make it less explanatory and just more thought-provoking. Because I would prefer not to over-explain the games themselves, but just delve into the topics that they explore on their own and tie that into the game, if that makes sense. Without trying to be like, that's what this game is about. But I don't know, it might be hard to do that, but I'll see. Anyway, so I'm happy about that, made progress there. And then the existential moral crisis that hit me, okay, was, I'd been thinking about this recently, and I mentioned this, I think, in my past few videos, that I've increasingly noticed that I think a flaw I have is having a big ego. For many reasons. I talked about how much it would get to me when people would talk shit to me on the internet. I talked about how it seems like my personality when I'm doing those kinds of tongue-in-cheek, like I'm the greatest types of videos, how it gets under people's skin, how I think provoking people like that can still maybe even be a good marketing tactic, and all that kind of stuff. But that it can also backfire on me, right? And it can make those things difficult to deal with psychologically. And so I've been mulling this over in my mind a lot, and I've been reflecting and praying and thinking a lot on what it is that I'm doing here, what my focus is, what was the point of why I'm doing all of this in the first place. And that was a big part of me talking about how I've figured out what I want to do, how I want to present myself, what this is all about, and all of that. And I think just randomly today, when I was sitting out there, I mentioned before, my favorite philosopher is Soren Kierkegaard. And I remembered that in one of his works, he wrote how he felt that the author and the artist should always be hidden away from the work. And so I looked up, why did he think that? Kierkegaard is one of the few philosophers where my respect for him is so great that I consider him smarter than me, which is gonna sound insanely arrogant, but I feel like most other philosophy that I've read, like with other philosophers, often doesn't impress me that much. I find them interesting or thought-provoking, but I also oftentimes feel like with most philosophers, when I went to read them for the first time, I felt as though, yeah, I've already thought about this stuff myself before. And they would go into depth about their ideas that made it more interesting and elaborate. But it never felt super revelatory for me personally. But Kierkegaard is the one philosopher, and Nietzsche as well. I think Nietzsche is really great. But Kierkegaard is my number one for being a guy where I'm like, oh shit, this guy's like 10 times smarter than me. I think I'm a little biased too, because Kierkegaard's worldview is very much in line with my own. And so I feel like it's almost like reading into my own, when I read his works, it's like reading into my own worldview, but written by someone who understands it even better and has like 10 times the depth that I do. So anyway, enough glazing of both Kierkegaard and myself. but yeah, so he wrote that he felt the author should be hidden away from their work. And so I looked up out of curiosity, like, what would his reasoning for this be? And I should have known right off the bat, considering how familiar I am with his work, that for him, the purpose of the artist is to serve the truth. And that when you're serving the truth and you're being a kind of servant in that way, you have to be living like an ethical lifestyle. And that ethical lifestyle involves self-denial and humility, the complete opposite of egoism. And so I don't disagree with that. I think he has a point there, and I couldn't really argue with this. And it made me think about the way I've been doing things and how I've been putting myself front and center in front of a camera, selling all my stuff and really trying to sell things using my personality. And he wrote how he felt that when you make yourself into a public figure, that it runs the risk of people admiring you as the person or admiring your work because they like you as a person, as opposed to them connecting on a deeper level with and understanding the work itself, and that it obscures the purpose of what you're doing exactly. Now, for me, in fairness, one difference, at least for me, is that when this started and I started making these videos and everything, it wasn't so much that I can't lie, I did want to be a public figure. But that wasn't my primary motivation. My primary motivation was that I thought I have to market my games. I have to sell them if I want to be able to do this for a living. And it seemed like leveraging my personality was a way to go about doing that. And that I felt I had a unique way of presenting myself and that might be able to help me. Especially in comparison to him in his own time, where he just had to publish books and there wasn't quite as much competition back then. And also, I'm pretty sure he had like a fortune from his family passing away that he was able to publish his own works and sort of just live off of that. So maybe a little easier for him. But nonetheless, I think his point still stands. And when I think about my own way of marketing things, I mean, I could hide my face away. I could just be a voice that I put out there. I could hide who I am, what my actual name is, all those kinds of things. Now, it's a little too late for that, of course. There's a lot of videos up there now, and my LinkedIn is connected to my company name and all this kind of stuff. But I did kind of have this idea in mind when I started this all out. Because part of the idea behind the name Solidio also was that I wanted this to be a sort of pseudonym for myself, and that I wanted, through that pseudonym, to create a separation between myself and my work. Precisely because I saw, kind of like how Kierkegaard mentions, my work as a kind of a completely separate thing from myself that is serving a greater purpose, and which is not to be connected to myself as a mere, hopefully, not so much in these videos, but hopefully humble human being. I've mentioned before that the whole, where I got the name from, and the original Latin phrase, that the whole point of it is to emphasize that whatever I accomplish or whatever works I make aren't really my own doing. It's the result of the situation I happen to be put in, that I'm just a vessel for something that's being done through me, that whatever gifts I might have or whatever things I might create, I can't take credit for it, right? I just happen to be like this and doing this. And there is no me that's actually doing anything. I'm just another cog in the machine. I mean, that's a bit of a sterile way to put it. A servant, another servant in the universe, if you will. Another person serving a purpose, even if I don't know exactly what that purpose is. So I had that idea in mind of creating this kind of separation between myself as a public persona and this pseudonym. And I did, from the beginning, I think I didn't focus enough on this, but I did want to create this distinction, or this almost like totally separate personality for this pseudonym that would be disconnected from myself as a regular person and who I am in my day-to-day life and how friends of mine might know me and so on. And I think that is the direction I'm trying to head in with these new videos as well, is that I want to create this, I don't want to say fake persona, but this alter ego, this separate personality. In fact, actually, just occurred to me on Instagram, that's what the description in my bio is. The alter ego of, and then it points to my real Instagram profile. And my Instagram profile is, I think, says alter ego of Solidia. So I had that original idea in mind, but I very much failed at it because 90% of my videos so far are definitely just me being my regular self, goofing off and talking about my regular stuff in my life and everything. These videos here, I even started to question what I'm doing here. Like, why did I make these videos? Maybe it's not so bad because I'm clearly not doing anything to try to make this public or popular. I am posting them publicly though. I could have made them private. But I don't know, here I feel like with these daily videos, I'm trying to present something genuine that people might find interesting or that they might learn from, to see the process of going through all of this and be inspired by it, or even they're themselves already going through this process themselves as well as an artist of some kind, or hell, whatever else. And maybe it feels I don't know, like companionship, like we're going through it together, you know. But anyway, the point is, I felt very called out thinking about what Kierkegaard had to say about this. I often find all of his works, man, every time I read it, I was thinking recently I need to go back and pick up one of his books again. I got all the best, well, almost all the best ones in my library. But every time I read it, man, it's always like the absolute, I don't think anyone I've ever read before challenges you on the deepest possible level to be the best that you can be more than this guy does. It's an insane level of depth. But anyway, I felt called out, and it really emphasized for me what I've been thinking about over the past few days, and that I think I really do need to, new priority. I forget what yesterday's priority was already. What was my priority yesterday? Was it the public speaking thing? I don't know. Doesn't matter. New priority, rein in the ego. I think that may in fact be my biggest problem right now. And so I need to humble myself. I think the faith that I have in myself is a good thing. I mentioned before, I think you need to have that if you're going to try to do anything great. But that doesn't mean you have to be egotistical about it. To be fair, half the time when I'm making my videos, I'm being kind of tongue-in-cheek about it. But even still, I think I need to step away from that completely and lean hard into what my original vision for all of this was, and be true to that. And I suppose at this point, it's probably too hard to remove myself completely from the spotlight, so to speak, since I put myself into it so hard. But I can at least be conscious from now on of how I'm going about doing that, and how I'm presenting myself, and what I want people to take away from anything that I make. And I think hopefully that will be good enough to create a greater distinction between myself as possible public persona versus the work that I do. It's kind of hard to be able to do something to the extreme that he would have talked about nowadays more than ever. Do you think it's even possible now artistically that you just make something, you throw it out there, and no one has any clue who you are, and people are like, wow, look at this great work of art? Like realistically, in fact, realistically, that never even happens. Even if someone tries to do that, people obsess over figuring out who made this and everything about them. In fact, not too long ago, I watched a documentary that was about J.D. Salinger, right? Salinger, the guy who wrote Catcher in the Rye, and the whole hoopla around him and how obsessed people were with finding him because he disappeared after writing the book and seemed to hate the spotlight, I guess. So yeah, maybe I don't need to obsess over it, but like I said, just remain conscious of it and try not to, as the old Bible saying goes, which I always have liked very much, not let my left hand know what my right hand is doing. And really, from the beginning, by being in any way expressive of my large ego, I've been hypocritical because I'm always very critical of others when they, for example, like when internet personalities will talk about something nice they did, or when companies come out and say, look at this great charity that we donated to, or anything like that, where you do some good act, but then you use it to also publicize yourself. I've always felt that one undercuts the other. And if you think about it, I think even in the case of making a great work and then using it to blow up your own ego, it's a similar kind of thing, especially if you take on that Kierkegaardian point of view where your work is meant to serve a certain kind of truth. And so it is itself a kind of act of charity or generosity towards others that you're trying to do, but then you undercut it by coming out and being like, look at what I made, it's the best. It becomes performative, it becomes an act. So, anyway, dilemma resolved. For the most part, perhaps. And I look forward to fixing up some more optimization stuff tomorrow. Thinking a little bit more about what I want to do with these videos. I think the scripts I have are pretty good. I think they're very much in the vein of what I want to do and everything I just talked about here. Maybe just got to think on it a little bit more. Might tweak them a bit. But I think I've got a good idea going there. And yeah. Enjoying making these videos. They're keeping me on the ball, keeping me accountable, helping me to resolve things by talking about them out loud. And also, it's probably not the best replacement for socialization, but at least it's some kind of connecting with other people, even if it's only a few people. It's kind of nice. Though still, I still gotta find some way to go out and meet people anyway, like I said. All right, I'm gonna get to bed. Peace out.